working hand in hand with Ms. Hall at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
Was she sort of in training at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you someone who was sort of supervising her?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what was your task or your assignment and Ms. Hall's assignment when you responded together at that time?
So on the 20th, my duties mainly were with the diagram of the outside.
Okay, the exterior of the residence.
On the, well, it was kind of the neighbors.
And that was going to be my question. The scene that was actually being processed by the sheriff's office, was that the address at 14110 Fensbury?
I'll have to double check, but yes, ma'am.
Okay, and the diagram that you did of the exterior of the residence, was that actually 14108 Fensbury?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And prior to that time, had you had experience in preparing diagrams of scenes?
Yes, ma'am.
And how did you know what area to diagram, measurements to take, that sort of thing? Who directed you on that?
So I talked with the on-scene detectives, and a lot of it is kind of left to us in a way on
Your
what we need to
experience.
measure and where from.
All right, Mr. Durr, I'm showing you it's been pre-marked as State's Exhibit 52. Do you recognize that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and is that a fair and accurate depiction of the diagram that you just described that you prepared of the exterior of the residence at 14108 Fensbury?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, this time I'd ask to move into evidence State's Exhibit 52.
Any objection?
No objection.
It'll be admitted.
And ask for permission to publish.
You may publish it.
All right, Mr. Durr, I'm going to zoom out here. In this diagram that we see of 14108, there's sort of a swinging, I believe it would be a door, kind of dead center of the page. Would that have been the front door to the residence at 14108?
Yes, ma'am.
In this diagram, you have a legend listed in the middle of it. What is that a legend of?
So that would be the evidence markers,
Okay.
1, 2, and 3, which would have been cartridge cases.
At the time that you prepared this diagram, were those evidence markers already in place in the location that we see in this photograph?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then you just actually took sort of the measurements of it and put it in the diagram?
Yes, ma'am.
On the diagram, we see latitude, longitude, I believe. Is that correct? Or are those distances?
Those are distances either south or east from
From what place?
the reference point, which is labeled as RP,
Okay,
which would have been that corner. As we're looking at it, would have been kind of the southeast corner.
and the southeast corner, is that, that line there that we see kind of where RP is pointing to, would that have been the garage of the residence at 14108?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The evidence markers that were at 1, 2, and 3, did you disturb or remove those in any way?
No, ma'am.
Did you take any role in collecting those items?
No, ma'am.
Did you have any other involvement at the scene on August the 20th of 2015?
Just was assisting grabbing bags or anything that CSI Becker needed at the time.
Okay.
Just additional equipment.
Did you ultimately end up responding back out to that residence the following day on the 21st in the evening?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you also assisting Ms. Hall at that time as she was in training of her processing of the scene?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you and Ms. Hall do on the 21st at the residence?
I know she took photographs of some of the inside of the residence. There were some areas of red blood-like substance that she marked and collected, and then we did some blue star photographs.
If you could, tell us what is Blue Star?
So blue star is a chemical that reacts with blood-like items and creates it to glow a bright blue, which allows us to then take photographs of it to make things that are not visible.
How do you make a decision at a crime scene to utilize Blue Star?
If we see any areas of possible blood located throughout the scene, and then our detectives will do the request for it.
Okay. Is it also something that you might use if it appears the scene has been cleaned in some way?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead. Mr. Jordan, I'm showing you what's been pre-marked as State's Exhibit 27A through X. Could you take a look at those photographs and let me know if you recognize them?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do those appear to be a fair and accurate depiction of the photographs that you and Ms. Hall took on the 21st at the Fensbury Drive residence?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time I'd ask to move into evidence State's Exhibit 27A through X.
No objection. They'll be admitted.
And ask for permission to publish them.
You may publish.
All right. State's Exhibit 27A. Mr. Durr, if you could tell us, what are the, in this photograph it appears to be pretty dark. What conditions do you need to take pictures and see this blue star that you've described?
So we do need it to be relatively dark. It doesn't have to be pitch black. But we have to do, it has to be dark enough, and it is considered a low light photography method in order to capture it. So it's kind of like leaving the shutter open for a while to allow as much light in as possible from the blue areas.
Okay, so in this photograph we see sort of reflecting or glowing areas. Is that areas where the blue star is sort of lighting up?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and how do you apply the blue star?
It's a spray, so it's an aerosol spray. It's water-based, and then we use a hand aerosol pump to spray it out.
Okay. State's Exhibit 27B. And I'm sorry, in State's Exhibit 27A, what area of the home is this?
That is in the laundry room, so you see the floor, and then where it's up vertical, that would be the washing machine.
Okay. State's Exhibit 27B, what is this a photograph of?
So that is in one of the bedrooms. You can actually see I'm captured partly in the photo.
And that was going to be my question. We can kind of see a person in the upper right corner of this photograph. Is that you?
Yes, ma'am.
And it appears that you're actually doing something with a bottle. We see gloves. What are you doing in this picture?
That is the blue star, and I'm administering it, so I'm actually spraying.
Okay. And in this photograph, we see, it looks like kind of like booties on your feet. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you wear those as you're going through the residence doing these various items of collecting items and processing?
Yes, ma'am.
State's Exhibit 27C. And actually, I'm sorry, 27B. Do you recall what bedroom of the house this was?
Not exactly.
Okay.
I know it was on the south side, but it was kind of the back.
Okay. At the time that you went in there to perform this blue star, is it fair to say that the room looked as it does in this picture and there was no body in the room?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. 27C, what area of the home is this?
So that's the same bedroom, but that's the door leading out into that into the hallway.
And State's Exhibit 27D, you can see what area this is.
It appears to be that hallway area and the lighted area where it's kind of the orangey color. That would have been back towards the kitchen area.
Okay. Of the home and going into like kind of the family room area?
Yes, ma'am.
And 27E, this one's kind of hard to see. Can you tell what area this is?
No, ma'am, I cannot.
Okay, let me bring the picture to you.
It's a little
That might
hard.
help. It's really dark. 27E.
I can see there we have some kind of a cabinet area off to on the right-hand
Okay.
side of it. But
So some kind of a cabinet area you were indicating here on the right side.
yes, ma'am.
And again, the very faint blue that's the blue star that you've been describing.
Yes, ma'am.
27F, what area of the home is this?
So that's going to be the kitchen area. On the right-hand side, we can see kind of the kitchen, or sorry, the left-hand side, we can see the kitchen island. On the right would be the stove.
Okay. 27G. Can you see this item in the back to tell you what area of the home this is?
We're still in the kitchen area. That looks to be the refrigerator.
Okay, and it appears that there's some blue lighting on the refrigerator itself. Do you recall that as well?
Down there at the very bottom, yes, ma'am.
27H. Do you recognize this?
Yes, ma'am. So that would be in the hall bathroom.
Okay. And the blue star in this picture appears to sort of be all over the floor. Do you recall?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And 27I, do you recall what area of the home this is?
So that would be in the kitchen area also. From the other photo that we had of the kitchen where we had the island, you can see where the broom was. The broom was leaning up next to the stove.
Okay.
And then in the bottom corner, we kind of have the edge of the refrigerator.
27J, can you tell or do you recall what area of the home this is?
We're still in the kitchen area.
Okay. And 27K.
So that would be the top of the washing machine.
Okay. Now, Blue Star, what the reflection that we see, this blue lighting that we see reflecting, what is that an indication of in your training?
So it is areas of possible blood.
Okay. And let me stop you there. You say possible blood. Do you perform, as a crime scene investigator with the sheriff's office, do you perform any type of confirmatory testing to confirm whether it's actually blood?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So it's an area of possible blood.
Yes, ma'am.
Can it also fluoresce with, can other things also fluoresce and cause the blue light?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is that?
Some types of soaps and other cleaning chemicals can cause that to happen
Okay.
also.
So when you see this blue light that we've seen all throughout this photograph, and it's telling you there's areas of possible blood, do you as crime scene investigators then perform a second test to sort of see if maybe it is in fact blood without the blue light?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is that?
We use a test that's called phenolphthalein.
Okay.
And
And is that also a presumptive test for blood?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. This blue light that we see here, and I'm sorry, what is this?
That's the top of the washing
Maybe
machine.
you said that and I missed it, my fault. Did you perform a phenolphthalein test on that washing machine to determine, again, another presumptive test for the presence of blood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and what were the results of that testing?
We got positive results.
Okay. What other areas, in the pictures that we saw where the blue star fluoresced, what other areas did you perform phenolphthalein testing on, and what were the results, if you could tell us?
Pretty much every area that tested, that showed the blue, we did test with phenolphthalein. In the living room area, there was a couch and a recliner that was in the living room, the sides of those. The floor near that washing machine.
I'm going to approach and show you State's Exhibit 27D because it's so dark.
So, that's the edge of the couch, and I don't remember exactly where the recliner was.
That's okay, and is that what you're referring to as an area that was a positive phenolphthalein test?
Yes, ma'am.
And you indicated in 27D the couch here in the top middle of the photograph.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you can continue.
So the floor next to the washing machine, so in the first photo that you showed, and
27A, these blue lights here towards the floor of the washing machine.
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And then the top of the washing machine, we also.
And is that it?
Let me check here. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Durr. I'll pass the witness.
Cross-examination.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I need to just ask you a question about the diagram. I think what you had said to Ms. Derry was that your reference point was from the corner of the garage where the RP is
Yes, ma'am.
on this diagram, and that's what the legend means.
Yes, ma'am.
So I guess, are you able to tell me how far marker number 1 was from the actual body of Mrs. Deans?
No, ma'am. I
Not
don't
this
measure from. I measure from a fixed point, not from anything that potentially can move.
And the same thing would be for marker number 2 and number 3, so I would have to rely on someone else that might have taken those measurements, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And that would have been at the request of the detective at the time?
Yes, ma'am.
When you went on August the 21st back to the house on Fensbury, together with crime scene technician Hall. Were you already aware that on August 20th, going then into the morning, early morning hours of August 21st, that crime scene technician Garman had already been there and had already performed some pheno test in certain areas of the house? Did anyone tell you that?
But when we arrived on scene, yes, ma'am, that other areas had already been tested, yes, ma'am.
You were brought at the direction at someone other than Detective Thomas?
Yes, ma'am, we met with Detective Lugo.
And at that point, he had identified for you areas that he wanted you to photograph and areas that he wanted you to perform Blue Star and pheno on, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And both Blue Star is to tell you that there might possibly be blood, and then pheno is a presumptive test, which obviously both of them can give off false positives, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And just for my edification and that of the jury, what is a false positive?
It can react and give you a positive result when it is not necessarily a confirmed later to be.
And for instance, you would expect to find in areas such as a washer machine, detergents and chemicals and things of that sort, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And the same could be true of, and the same could be true of, for instance, on a couch area, if some type of cleaning has been done on a couch area with some type of detergents, again, you could have a reaction. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the reaction that we were seeing in the one picture that Ms. Deary showed you, which I think was 27D, which involved potentially the recliner also.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall if the Blue Star was along the side of the recliner?
I don't recall. The couch, it was kind of all on the side, the arm area and down the side of it.
Okay. And you can't recall specifically on the recliner, but the photograph was dark. If I show you the photograph, do you think you could determine from the photograph?
No, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Oh wait, I'm sorry, one more question from my co-counsel. Is the diagram that we've had introduced here today the only diagram that you prepared?
Yes, ma'am.
So that was of the home at 14108. You were not asked to do any type of diagram of 14110 at all on the exterior, is that correct?
No, ma'am.
And were you asked to do any type of diagram or any type of measurements between the two houses, 14108 and 14110 Fensbury at all?
No, ma'am.
And were you asked in any way to measure for any distances, perhaps from where Mrs. Dean's body was found to the residence at 14110 in any way?
Not that I recall.
And again, had you been asked to do that by a detective, obviously you would have done that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much.
Redirect.
No redirect, Judge.
May this witness be excused by the state
Yes, sir.
and by the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down. You may be excused as a witness at this time. Now I'll ask the state to call your next witness.
Serial call Jacob, excuse me, Your Honor. Serial call Jacob Becker.
Jacob Becker. Becker, good afternoon. If you'll face me and raise your right hand to be sworn, thank you. Do you swear affirm any testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. If you'll follow the bailiff around to the ramp, please watch your step. Go ahead and have a seat. Make yourself comfortable. That microphone does it justice. You may proceed.
Good afternoon, Mr. Becker. If you could please tell the jury your name and spell your last name for the court reporter.
Jacob Becker, B-E-C-K-E-R.
And how are you employed, Mr. Becker?
I'm currently employed as a shift supervisor in the Forensic Services section for the Pasco County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been working, is that with the crime scene investigation unit?
That's correct.
Okay. And how long have you been working over at Pasco County?
For a year and a half now.
prior to working as a crime scene investigator in Pasco County, did you work anywhere else?
I worked for Hillsborough County as a crime scene investigator from 2006 to 2018, and prior to that with the Manatee County Sheriff's Office as a crime scene investigator in 2002.
Okay. So back in 2015, you would have been working with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office as a crime scene investigator, is that accurate?
That's correct.
Right. Do you recall specifically being called out to a scene on August 20th of 2015?
I do.
And were you the first, well, tell me, when did you get the call to come out there?
I received the call from dispatch at approximately 9:45 that evening, and I got on scene around a little bit after 10:30.
Were you one of the first crime scene investigators to arrive at the scene?
I was.
Okay. And when you got there, was law enforcement already there?
Yes, they were.
And were were detectives already there as well?
I don't recall if there was detectives, but I'm sure they were on the way.
All right. And at some point or another, you were tasked with doing certain jobs in that scene?
That's correct.
Okay. And what were you tasked with?
Just photography, evidence collection for evidence that was outside of the residence.
Okay. Did you ever go inside 14110, the actual crime scene?
I did not.
All right. Did you go inside 14108 at any time?
I believe so, yes.
And what was the purpose of that?
I guess the neighbor stated that they saw somebody leaving through a window, so I photographed from her point of view what she possibly saw.
Okay. So while you were out there that night, you took some pictures, correct?
I did.
I'm going to show you what are marked as states exhibits 1P through 1T, and just have you take a quick look through and see if you recognize these pictures. Do you recognize those pictures?
I do.
And what are the pictures of?
This is the driveway. I'm not sure what address that is actually, if it's 14108 or 14110. It's the driveway where the decedent was found, along with some tent.
The area looked like that day when you arrived there?
Yes.
There's moved to add states exhibit 1 P through T admitted into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
They'll be admitted.
Published, Your Honor.
You may.
And that's the mailbox you were just referring to, is 14110.
Correct?
And that's looking towards the driveway where the deceased was found.
That's correct.
And that was 1P. 1Q. This is the driveway after the deceased has been removed. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
And these markers, these cones, were things you had placed down to mark.
That's right.
1R. Just another picture of that. And then 1S. What's a picture? What is that picture of?
I believe that is the residence where the other decedent was found.
All right, and those were the vehicles that were parked there, and that's how they were parked.
That's correct.
And then 1T, that's the front of that other residence.
That's correct.
I'm also going to show you what are marked as States Exhibit 2A through S. You can look through those, please, and see if you recognize them. Do you recognize those?
I do.
And what are those pictures of?
These would be overalls of the scene where the decedent was found in the driveway, along with her injuries.
Okay. And Do those pictures fairly and accurately look like the pictures you took when you were out there on that evening?
They do.
Judge, move to have State's Exhibit 2A through S admitted into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
They'll be admitted.
So when you arrived on the scene, was the scene secured?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And by secured, I mean there were crime scene tape around to make sure no one was coming in or out of the location?
That's correct.
All right, and I take it, obviously, because the following pictures, the body was still there when you arrived, correct?
That's right.
So showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 2A. Again, this is the location of the body when you arrived.
That's correct.
And did you move it in any way before taking these pictures?
I did not.
And these orange cones that are right around her, did you take, or did you put those cones down there?
I did not. Those were placed by deputies to mark the position of the shell casings
Okay.
prior to my arrival.
All right. And then 2B, this is a picture from another angle, is that accurate?
That's correct.
And 2C, that would be looking down the driveway facing basically the opposite direction of the original picture I showed in 2A, correct?
That is correct.
2D, this is just from the other side, is that accurate?
That is correct.
Now, in 2E, it appears at this point you've now put out the evidence markers. Why do you put out evidence markers versus just leaving the cones?
It just gives a better visual representation.
And do the numbers also help in knowing where you're picking up things and where each the piece of evidence came from?
That'd be correct.
All right. Now, I noticed in this picture, it looks like there's on the body of Miriam Deans, it looks like there's a blue kind of a mark there or a thing on her arm there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what that is?
I do.
Okay, what is that?
It's referred to as a lead, which is a device that EMS would place on a person to get any electrical activity from the heart.
Okay. Did you see EMS actually do that, or was that on there when you got there?
I did not see EMS.
Now, in this picture, there's marker number 1, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and this would be a close-up of that?
That's correct.
And that's the casing, is that accurate?
That is a casing, yes.
What is a casing? Explain to the jury what a casing is.
Basically, the common phrase is a bullet. So you have the bullet in the casing. When a gun is fired, the bullet or the projectile is spun through the chamber of or the barrel of the gun, and then the casing is ejected. So what's left behind is just evidence that a gun was fired.
Now, a location of a casing, does that tell you anything?
It can, but on concrete, things like that are hard, the casings can bounce, they can roll, they can be kicked around. So it gives you a general perspective of where somebody was when they shot the gun, but it doesn't actually say they were standing right there.
Okay. And then picture number 2G, that's a picture of the bullet that's was in picture number 1. Is that, or I'm sorry, in the picture just before it, marker number 1?
Yes, that is the 380 Hornady casing.
And then in 2H, we have over here on this side marker number 2, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and this is the feet of the deceased, correct?
Correct.
And then 2I is a more close-up photo of marker number 2.
That's correct.
And then 2J, this is the casing for marker number 2?
That's correct.
And what does it say it is?
It's a 380 Auto Hornady casing.
In 2K, we see marker number 3, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And then 2L is a more close-up of that casing.
Correct.
Now, the casing in this picture can be a little bit deceptive because of how it's located and the color of the driveway, but
Judge, I'm gonna object to the leading nature of the question and the characterization.
I'm sorry, Judge.
Rephrase.
I'll rephrase. In marker number 3, can you tell me where the casing is located?
It would
in this
be
picture?
towards the middle of the picture, almost exactly middle.
Almost exactly in the middle, like so, like
Uh,
around in this area?
yes.
See it right there?
That's correct.
Okay. And then did you take a picture of that casing as well?
I did.
Is that marker number, or I'm sorry, is that picture number 2M?
That is correct.
In photograph 2N, picture of Miriam Dean's, there's again those blue markers on near her ankles. Are those the leads we're referring to?
That's correct.
Okay, and again, in 2O, we see it on the other elbow as well, correct?
That's correct.
Were those the only places you saw the markers?
Yes, the ankles and the elbows.
Now, while you're out there, does the medical examiner show up?
Yes, they do. Okay.
Prior to the medical examiner showing up, do you turn the body, move the body, or do anything with the body like that?
Absolutely not.
All right. Now, once the medical examiner arrives, does the medical examiner look at the body to see if they can find any obvious signs of injury as to what may have occurred?
Yes,
All right. And do you stay with the medical examiner as they do that and take photographs of the injuries they observe?
I do.
All right. In picture number 2P, what injury did the medical examiner observe here that you were taking a picture of?
I believe it's just an overall injury to the face and the head.
Okay. It's been, and she has like over her eye, is that like a cut or a gash of some sort?
I'm not sure if that might be an eyebrow, but it also might be a gash.
Okay. And then in 2Q, was that again discovered once the medical examiner was there?
Yes.
And what did that appear to be?
To my knowledge, that's a gunshot type wound injury.
Okay, and did the medical examiner notice that and inform you of that to take a picture of it?
Yes.
And then 2R, this is another injury that was noted by the medical examiner?
That's correct.
And did you take a picture of it?
I did.
And where's that on her body? Because it's hard to tell from this. Can you tell?
I believe that's
Number?
towards the hip.
Okay. And then in 2S, was that the other injury that was noted by the medical examiner?
Yes.
Okay.
It's more behind the ear.
Now, aside from photographing the body, the scene, and the injuries, did you collect any evidence while you were there?
Just those 3 casings.
All right. Show me what's been marked as State's Exhibit. State's Exhibit number 35 for identification. Ask if you can recognize it.
I do.
Okay, and can you open it up and take a look inside? And how do you recognize it, first of all?
Each piece of evidence is given a label that I create, and it's got my name as the original impounding officer on there, and then the rest of it's filled out.
All right, can you open it up and take a look inside? And do you recognize what that is?
I do.
And what is that?
That is the 380 casing.
Does it appear to be in the same or substantially the same condition as it was when you got it?
It is.
And do you know where that one was taken from which marker?
Yes, this was marker 1.
All right. Judge, moved out State's Exhibit number 35 admitted into
Any
evidence.
objections?
No, Your Honor.
Be admitted.
Bullets right
May I publish, Your Honor?
You may.
I'll show you State's Exhibit number 36 for identification. Ask you to take a look at that envelope. Do you recognize that envelope?
I do.
And how do you recognize it?
Again, for the same way, it's got a label on the outside that has the identifier of where the casing was collected from, the case number, the date it was collected, and my ID.
Where does it say that casing was collected from?
Marker 2.
Okay. Can you open it up and take a look inside? And what is it?
It's a 380 casing.
That's the casing you recovered on that night?
Yes, it is.
All right, Judge Booth, that's State's Exhibit number 36, admitted into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, and Judge, I'm not gonna have any objection to the exhibits before Mr. Becker.
All right.
Okay.
Be
I'll just,
admitted.
thank you, Judge.
Just,
So Judge, at this point then, with no objection, I'll go ahead and admit State's Exhibit number 37 as well.
It'll be admitted.
Published, Your Honor.
You may.
And then 37 was the casing that you recovered from, what would that be, marker number 3?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, aside from photographing the scene and collecting this evidence, did you have any other involvement, and I know you mentioned going inside the house and taking a photo from inside the house, any other involvement in the scene, the processing of the scene?
Not of the scene, but of the evidence.
Okay, and what was that you did?
I processed the casings for possible DNA and for possible fingerprints.
Okay, in your career, and how did you process the casings for fingerprints?
For fingerprints, the first thing we do is run it under a system called the full spectrum imaging system. Basically, it uses UV light in order to make latent fingerprints a little bit more visible. I didn't get any results from that. The next step was to process the casings with superglue fumes. The superglue allegedly adheres to the moisture in the fingerprint, making it visible. No results on that. I tried black powder. Again, no results. My last step was a chemical called RAM, I believe, which basically will stick to any super glue, and again, no results.
All right. And is it common to get prints from casings?
No.
How often in your career have you ever gotten a print from a casing?
In 17 years, I've gotten a partial fingerprint, and it didn't match to anybody. And I've processed thousands and thousands of casings.
I have one moment here.
Yes.
I took a pass, please.
Cross?
Mr. Becker, when you arrived out at the scene at 10:30 at night, and you indicated that already crime scene tape was up and other people were already there, correct?
That's correct.
And as you were coming down the street towards this cul-de-sac area where the houses were, how many street lights did you pass?
Oh, I don't recall.
Okay. Do you recall whether or not law enforcement themselves had to use lighting for the exterior of the house, that the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office themselves set up lighting so that you could see better out there?
I believe I set up a light.
Okay, you did?
I think so.
Tell us exactly what you did
It's-
and why you did.
Yeah, that's so there were street lights out there. I know that my supervisors at the time like to have extra lighting, so I put up a light. It's basically it's called a nomad light. It's a big cylindrical light, pops up, and you can adjust it up to 10 or 12 feet tall, and that's what we used.
And it lightens it in not just a direct in front of you, but it kind of does a wide array of lighting, doesn't it?
That's correct.
And you, did it cover both, did it cover both of the addresses, 14108 as well as 14110?
I believe so, yes.
And when you went inside the home at 14108 to take photographs, I assume that you were directed to do so by someone based on an interview with a witness, is that correct?
That is correct.
And when you went into the residence, did you talk yourself to the witness at all that had actually looked out that window to see whatever they saw?
No.
Do you know whether or not, when you took the photographs that you took from within the home, the lights were on in that general area where those windows were?
Yes, I asked the deputy or detective, whoever was with me, I don't recall, to recreate exactly what they saw, and then I set my camera settings to be as accurate as possible.
Okay, I guess I'm gonna ask you this question then. Do you know whether the lights in that room were on at the time that the individual that was interviewed said that they saw something?
I believe the lights were off, because that's, if I remember correctly, that's the way they were off on the inside when I took the photo.
So you took the lights that were on and shut them down because that's what you were told to do to recreate the best scene?
Yes.
And then the photographs that you took, these are photographs that are already in evidence from previous testimony earlier today, but let me show those to you and ask you if these, if you recall taking these photographs, or if you recall taking photographs from a similar location.
I do.
Are those photographs that you took?
They're very similar to.
Or at least they appear to?
Yes.
Is that, okay. And is that a fair and accurate representation of what you would have seen from that window?
Yes, those pictures are illuminated with the flash that was on the camera.
So you're using a flash as you're looking out.
That's correct.
So to the naked eye that I have right now, it looks like the lights inside the house are also on. Am I misreading the naked eye?
It could be, and it may not be, and that may be just from the flash.
So you can't really, from the photograph, you can't really tell me whether or not the lights were on or off, or if this is just because of a flash that's illuminating more than perhaps the natural lighting would have?
It's fair, yeah.
That's fair?
Yeah.
Possible? The driveway where the decedent was found, where there were the cones that you ultimately placed evidence markers at. As it relates to evidence marker number 1, could you tell me how many feet away from Ms. Dean's that was, that marker?
I didn't do the measurements. I could guess if you like.
Yes?
Sure.
Do you need to look at photographs to show you where the markers are?
Nah, I pretty much remember. I would think probably not more than 10, no more than 5. Or sorry,
No less,
no less than 10, no more than 5. Or other way around.
no less than 5, no
Yeah.
more than 10?
There you go.
I don't want to testify for you, but is that what you're saying?
Yes, in between 5 and 10. How about that?
All right. And how about evidence marker number 2?
I'd say that one was a little bit closer, maybe 4 or 5 feet.
And evidence marker number 3?
Probably about the same distance.
As number 2?
Yes.
And you indicated that the placement of casings in some circumstances could tell you perhaps where a shooter might have been.
That's correct.
However, you certainly were qualifying that by saying that casings bounce, roll, and things of that sort, correct?
That is correct.
In the photographs that I recall looking at, it would appear that the blood pattern that was traveling down.
Correct.
And there were 2 markings in one direction, 2 markers in one direction and one in a different direction. One was at the top of the body, one was at the bottom, correct?
Correct.
All right, 2 of them. Thank you. I have nothing. Well, let me ask you another thing. I think you said to Mr. Terry that you also conducted DNA swabbings
I
on
did.
the casings.
That's correct.
And did you garner any results from that?
I just take the swabs, we send them off to FDLE to get anything.
All right, thank you. And you did that for all 3 of the casings?
That's right.
Thank you, Judge.
For redirect,
No, Your Honor.
may this witness be excused by the state
Yes, Your Honor.
and by the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down. You may be excused as the witness at this time. State, I'll ask you to call your next witness.
State will call Detective Greg Thomas.
Detective Thomas. Mr. Terry, is it Corporal Thomas now?
It is Corporal.
I'm sorry, just Corporal, yes.
Corporal Thomas, good afternoon and welcome. If you'll come forward to be sworn wherever you're comfortable, if you'll face me and raise your right hand, please, thank you. Do you swear affirming testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Swear. Thank you, Corporal. If you'll follow the deputy around to the ramp that leads up to the chair, please watch your step. When you get to the chair, go ahead and have a seat, make yourself comfortable. That microphone does adjust, and when you're ready, I'm going to allow the attorneys to ask you some questions.
All right.
Good afternoon, Corporal Thomas.
Hello.
Please tell the jury your name and spell your last name for court order.
Greg Thomas, Thomas.
And Corporal Thomas, where are you employed?
Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office?
About 19 years now.
What's your current position with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office?
I'm assigned as a homicide section supervisor, corporal rank.
As a corporal rank of the homicide unit, what are your duties there?
Pretty much just supervise the assigned detectives to that particular unit in the capacity of calling them out on current cases. I'll go out with them myself to current cases, evaluating their supplements, reports, making sure payroll is up to date and so forth.
As a corporal now, though, you don't normally take on a lead detective type role in a case?
No.
All right. Back in August of 2015, what was your position at that point?
I was a detective assigned to homicide.
All right. Were you on duty the night of August 20th of 2015?
Yes, I was called out.
You were called out. Where were you called to go? Do you recall?
The actual residence or the numerical, I'd have to refer to the supplement, but it was in the Carrollwood Village area, which is part of our District 3 patrol area.
Okay. Would 14108 Finsbury Drive sound familiar?
Yes, Finsbury Drive, correct.
Right. Do you recall about what time you arrived there?
I think it was a few minutes before 10 p.m. or so, or a little after 10 p.m.
What did you do when you first arrived?
Pretty much started to evaluate from patrol, or just basically be debriefed by patrol. As soon as I arrived, it was the residence is in a cul-de-sac, so the area was cordoned off with crime scene tape. There were several deputy vehicles or marked vehicles parked around the area with deputies out on what we would call a perimeter, because of the actual 911 call that there were shots heard, and a decedent was located in a neighbor's driveway next to the incident scene of Finsbury. So it was assumed that maybe there was an active shooter, if you will, or active suspect in the area.
Now, when you first arrived, obviously the body in the driveway had been located. Had the other body been located at the time you arrived?
Yes, I was advised by patrol that under the circumstances of responding to shots being fired and locating a victim or decedent, that they noticed the front door to the said residence, 14108 Finsbury, was somewhat ajar and open, so they didn't know if they had potential other victims inside or potential suspect, so they had a duty to go and look into it. They found a locked door, bedroom door. Once they made entry into that bedroom door, they located another deceased victim.
Right. Now, could the address have been actually 14110, 1411108 being the house with the driveway? And
Correct.
house?
The house 108 was where one of the 911 calls originated from. So
Okay.
you're correct.
All right, and so basically the house next door, would that be accurate?
Yes.
All right. And so when you were advised of this, what did you all do?
At that point, once I was kind of debriefed on what they had located inside, I needed to start to verify if we had like a murder-suicide type of situation or an active homicide situation with a potential suspect somewhere. So I went in to evaluate and look at the decedent on the inside of the residence and noted that he appeared to have been deceased for quite a period of time. So with my experience, I deduced that that was not going to be a murder-suicide situation. I had everybody pull out of the house, secure it so that I could author a search warrant.
Have you been to numerous crime scenes in your career?
Yes, I was a detective for almost 15 years, so hundreds of scenes.
Hundreds of scenes. So you've seen dead bodies at various stages of decomposition? I guess?
Yes.
And so you were readily able to tell that this body had been around for a little while?
Yes,
Right. And based on that, you realized you had something different than a murder-suicide?
that was my opinion, yes.
Was your opinion? Okay. And so did everyone clear out of the scene when you said that?
Yes.
Right. And what did you do with the house at that point?
A deputy was posted at the front door to make sure nobody went in or out. The rest of my homicide unit arrived to the scene. I debriefed them on what we had. I believe it was Detective Lugo at the time. Started assisting with crime scene on processing the decedent, Miriam Deans, on the outside next door in the neighbor's residence. And I started to author a search warrant on my laptop.
Right. Now, were you assigned a specific duty? Because don't as a detective, when there's a scene, don't detectives get assigned specific duties?
Yes, pretty much when we arrive on a scene and debrief and discuss what's going on, there will be one detective assigned as the lead detective. One will be assigned as the assist to the lead. One will be assigned as the crime scene detective, which I was assigned on this particular case. And all the other detectives are peripheral ancillary that assist with leads and interviews and so forth.
Right. And as the crime scene detective, what are your specific duties with that?
Pretty much document processing of the scene and work with our crime scene investigators, document everything, and make decisions on, along with crime scene, on what to be processed, what to be collected. Eventually, once the scenes are released, then we'll discuss with the lead detective on what we want to submit to various labs or Florida Department of Law Enforcement to process or analyze.
All right. How long did it take to get the search warrant authorized?
It was a few hours. I had some network connectivity issues, so I actually had to leave the scene and drive to one of our district offices and log in so I can author it. So it was a few hours before it was actually written up and then provided to a judge for review.
All right, and while you're doing that, I guess the crime scene remains secure and everyone just kind of waits around until the warrant is actually approved.
Yes.
All right. Do you recall at what time you got the search warrant approved?
Referring to my supplement, I think it's about 2:30 in the morning. Yeah, it was roughly about 2:30, and by the time I got back to the scene, driving back from the judge's house, it was probably about 3 a.m.
Okay. And what did you do when you got back to the scene?
Pretty much we conducted a walkthrough. Crime scene investigators will start to photograph and conduct overall photographs and or video the scene. So we would have entered in to conduct overall photographs. They had some animals in there. I think a couple of the dogs were secured on the back patio area. We counted 3 cats in there, so we were able to move the cats into a back bedroom so they wouldn't run out of the house. And pretty much started just taking account of what kind of scene we had, how much of the house would be involved, and so forth.
All right. And you do this with the crime scene investigators. Do you recall which crime scene investigators were involved in that time?
CSI Shelby Garman. I think Brandon Douglas was there that first night. Going into the next morning, I mean, we pretty much will stay on scene round the clock. So going into the next day, I know Matt Evans and I think Caitlin Hall came the following day to relieve the night shift
And
folks.
did you stay on scene the whole time?
I went home probably going in the next day, maybe about 4:30 in the afternoon the following day.
Okay. When you did the initial search of the residence, did any particular items of evidence stand out to you as you were going through?
We started pretty much, you go room by room, kind of in a pattern, if you will, or maybe counterclockwise or clockwise, depending on where in a structure a decedent may be or evidence. So within the kitchen area, we started to note possible blood, kind of a pattern or spattering, if you will. So those areas would be marked with certain evidence markers, photographed, added to scale for diagramming, and then later on, once all the previous steps were completed, they would be tested presumptively for whether or not it's human blood or not. So they were later tested and proved positive for human blood.
Okay. What did you notice, if anything, in the laundry room?
There was, in the kitchen area, there was a bucket with some mop water and an actual mop inside, like a ringing mop bucket, and then you would move right into the utility room, and within the washing machine there was laundry in there that was still wet, that just had not been moved to the dryer, but you could tell it had been washed. So there was we went through all those items and found like a pair of what I would say girls' jeans or young person's jeans, flannel shirt. I believe there was a sponge in there as well, like a cleaning sponge, and then a ball cap.
All right. Anything about the ball cap that you noticed when you were looking at it?
There was a hole in the back, like where the kind of the tag or the strap would be to tighten it. There was a hole in the back of it.
Did you notice anything in the main family room area where the TV was?
There was, later on we were able to determine some possible blood, which tested later positive for human blood, upon one of the sides of the couches that was facing, I think, the TV. TV was on. There was a there was a movie that would have been playing that was on pause. Within a like a bookshelf, there was a lot of DVDs, like movies, kind of they must have collected DVDs or something. One of the bookshelves had a small spot of later to be determined to be blood. There was like a recliner chair with a bag of Cheetos in it, and I think another ball cap was sitting in one on the couch. Things of that nature, typical things you would find in a family room as well.
How about in the bedroom, in the southwest bedroom, the bedroom without the body, not the master bedroom? Did you find anything in there?
That would be
The room with the window was open.
that we found some documentation for the defendant's school schedules. We found, I think, some documentation for some recent medical procedure. We found, I want to say, over-the-counter medication on, like a open tab from over-the-counter medication on the dresser. The window was open. That's all that I can think of right now without going through the property receipt.
Now, from the crime scene and from all the evidence you all were able to gather throughout the processing time, were you able to determine a location where the decedent may have been shot?
It was surmised that it was somewhere in, this is kind of a typical, like, Florida home split floor plan, master suite on one side, bedrooms on the other, living room, family room, open kitchen area. So it was based on the blood pattern and what we were able to process with applying a Blue Star application that probably was discussed earlier with crime scene investigators. It looked like it would have been kind of in the walkway between like the kitchen area going into the family room, which then opens going south into the bedrooms and a bathroom. So like in that general area on tile floor.
Did, were any fingerprints located?
Yes.
Go ahead, explain that.
It was on the outside wall of the bedroom where the decedent was located, the decedent on the inside of the house. There was a fingerprint on a wall next to the door on the right side of the door, bedroom door.
And did you have your crime scene investigator process that fingerprint?
Yes, we ended up removing that part of the wall, the drywall, preserving it.
Now, after this initial search, and so you understand, crime scene investigator Garman's already been here, we've gone through all that, pictures and all the evidence of that.
Okay.
But after that particular search that you conducted with Shelby Garman, did you come back to the house at a later time to conduct another search?
Yes, I would have kind of on the 20th after midnight when we go into the 21st. By the time the search warrant was served and we started processing the house, I would have stayed through those wee hours of the morning, all through the 21st till I think about 4:30 that afternoon of the 21st, and then I went home to sleep for a little while. And I believe a couple of the other crime scene investigators came that evening when it got dark again to apply Blue Star, so I wasn't present for that, but came the next morning, which would have been the 22nd, I think at about 9 a.m. to finish the processing on the inside of the house, and then we would have moved to the exterior of the house to make sure we weren't leaving anything behind with going through, I mean, the entire yard, the outdoor pool area, driveway, garage, all that kind of stuff.
Show you what's been marked as State's Exhibits number 24A through G, and ask you if you can take a look at these and see if you recognize what those are.
Yes.
And what are those?
The first photograph would have been in the kitchen area between the laundry room and like the walkway coming out of the open kitchen into the family room area. And it was like a kind of like a wine bar table. And on that would be a, looks like a class schedule. Several classes and their locations and whatnot. This photograph here with marker 3, it's a framed picture of what would be the male decedent, Robert Deans. At that time, we're still trying to basically verify his identity. So we were looking through, one of the bedrooms was, I guess, established as like the home office, and it had like a desk in there, some filing cabinets. That's where all their bills and so forth were. So we were trying to find birth certificate, marriage certificate, anything with his actual like date of birth on it, maybe social security and so forth. So we started photographing a few of the picture frames in there with both the decedents, and then found a couple of these Sentry safes. They had the keys in them, so within them we photographed items that were identifiable as like, I think he had like I think it was his birth certificate in one of them. But there were some documents in there that would help us with identification.
Did these pictures, do they fairly and accurately represent what pictures you took from that secondary search?
Yes.
Judge, may we read that State's Exhibit 24A through G admitted into evidence?
No objection.
They will be admitted.
Okay. In 24A, this is that, I guess you call it that wine bar sort of thing?
Yes.
And we see on top of there, maybe 24B shows a little better. Was that where this schedule was found? Was it in that location?
It was.
All right. And then 24C. And this would be the schedule you're talking about that you found there?
That's what was found right there on that table, yes.
And then 24D, this would be the photograph of who you later identified as Robert Deans, the
Correct.
victim, the male victim in this case.
Yes.
And 24E,
Yes, those were, within, there was like a linen closet on the, right next to the entry door to the bedroom that we pretty much noted as being like the home office.
and 24F is just more close to those pictures.
Correct.
And then 24G were the safes.
Yes, they were in that linen closet before the office
Okay.
door.
And the safes were in there, no one had touched them, no one had moved them, they were just still there, just like that.
Correct, yeah, nothing within the office looked like it had been rifled through or, you know, looked through or anything like that. I mean, they had like current bills up on, I think a bed was in there, or a day bed, and then a desk from what I remember, and filing cabinets, but it appeared to be intact as they would leave it.
But no signs that anyone had tried to go through the safes or open the safes?
No.
Did you have the class schedule that was found in the kitchen taken into evidence?
Yes.
I'm showing you what's marked as State's Exhibit number 56. Ask you if you can open that up and take a look inside.
Judge, the defense is going to have no objection to the introduction of this document.
You want to move it in?
Yes, Judge, we'll move it in at this time.
It'll be admitted.
Thank you.
What number, I'm sorry?
It's State's Exhibit number 56.
Thank you.
And this that I'm holding up here, this was the actual paper that was found. It's like a kind of a Xerox copy of the class schedule. This was what was found on that wine bar that
Yes.
you just described.
Yes.
Okay. Now, aside from the search of the house, you said you also did a search of the exterior of the house?
Yes.
Were you able to find anything of any evidentiary value on the search of the exterior of the house?
No, obviously with a scene like this, you're gonna be looking for anything of evidentiary value, weapons, and anything else, and nothing was located on the exterior. No.
Did there come a time where you did a dive of the lake behind the house?
Judge, may we approach? Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a very short break. We're still going to be on schedule for getting out of here, but we're just going to let you go back in the jury room for just a moment. So don't talk about the case with anyone, including yourselves, and don't do any research. All rise for the jury. All members of the jury are present and seated. Everyone else may be seated at this time. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, welcome back. We're going to pick up where we left off.
Detective, I left off by asking, when you conducted that search of the outside, did you also, there was a lake behind the house, did you also send a dive team and do a search of the lake?
Yes, we did.
And were you able to recover anything in the lake?
No, we weren't.
All right. Now, there were a couple of vehicles at the residence, correct?
Yes.
Did you search those vehicles?
Yes, we had them towed back to our crime scene garage. It's closed off, secured bays. Searched the vehicles there. One of the vehicles was registered to Robert Dean's. I think it was a red pickup at Ford, maybe. The other one was Miriam Dean's Volkswagen.
Okay, I'm going to show you where marked as State's Exhibit 20. And were you present for those searches of
Yes.
vehicles? I'm going to show you what's marked as State's Exhibit 26A through K for identification. Ask you to look through those and see if you recognize what that is.
So we have no objections to the introduction of this exhibit.
All right, it'll be admitted into evidence. What number is it?
It's 26A through K.
All right, they will be admitted as composite exhibits.
All right, 26A, this is the truck you were just referring to that belongs to Robert Dean's.
Correct.
And the location of this, obviously it's in a warehouse building, that's owned by the sheriff's office.
Correct. That's one of the crime scene garage bays.
Okay. And then 26B is another view of this truck from a different angle.
Yes.
26C,
Same truck. Yes.
26D,
Front. Yes.
in the bed 26E,
Yes.
the interior 26F,
Yes.
26G,
Yes.
from the driver's side, from the passenger side 26H,
Yes.
and I take it this would be like the back seat 26I,
Yes.
and then 26J, where were these located?
The driver's side visor.
And then 26K,
Those were, I believe, came out of the glove compartment of the Ford truck.
other than these identifying materials that were found inside the truck, was anything else of any evidentiary value found in the truck?
No.
Judge, the defense has no objection to exhibit 25A
A through L.
through L.
It will be admitted.
Thank you, Judge. Publish?
You may.
All right, and I'm gonna put these up, but I think you'll recognize what they are, even I haven't seen them yet. 25A, what is this a picture of?
That would be the Volkswagen registered to Miriam Dean's.
All right. And 25B,
Same vehicle, driver's side.
now is this a different bay, because it looks, the walls and stuff look a little different?
It's just the other side. They're 4 bays, so this would be right next door. There's that black curtain would separate this car from the red truck. That's on the other side.
25C is
Yes.
from the vehicle, 25D is from another angle,
Yes.
25E,
Same car. Yes.
okay, that's looking into the driver's side door.
Correct.
The same with 25F, it's just kind of a little bit larger picture of it.
Yes.
25G would be the back seat, is that correct?
Correct.
25H,
Yes.
25I,
Yes. That's a center console area.
and 25J, that's the trunk that's open.
Yes.
25K, it's the bag, correct? Or
Yes.
That was in the back seat?
That was, everything was as it was found within the car. Yes.
Okay. And then 25L, where was this found?
I believe that was in the bag, in the picture previously. I believe it was.
In this picture here?
I believe it was.
It was in there? Alright.
But it came from the car though, somewhere in the interior of the car.
In that last picture I showed you, what was that a picture of?
Hotel receipt from where Marion Deans was staying up in Jacksonville.
Did you take that receipt into evidence?
Yes, we did.
And have you open evidence number 57 and take a look inside and see if you recognize what that is?
If that is exhibit number 57, the defense is going to have no objection to its introduction.
It'll be admitted.
Still
Go ahead
open?
and do so. That's the receipt you found?
Yes.
And where does it say that Ms. Deans was staying?
It's called the Navy Gateway Inns and Suites in Jacksonville, Florida.
And what was her date of check-in?
Looks like the 18th of August, 2015.
And
And
what was the date she checked out?
looks like the 19th, 2015. Or it's charged at least through the 19th. So probably going into the 20th that morning would have been leaving.
Judge, I'm
So-
going to object to any speculation of what it means going into the next day. The receipt would speak for itself.
I'll sustain that. I'll caution the witness not to speculate.
Judgment publishes to the jury. So basically it's showing a room charge for 2 nights.
Yes.
And was this the only thing of any evidentiary value that you found within the vehicle belonging to Miriam Deans?
Yes, just other than, her bag of clothing and there were some items from the car that would have been brought into the house prior, so there was, I think, a laptop came out of the car as well.
Tell me at the moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
No further questions, Corporal Thomas.
Cross-examination.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
It would be fair to say, based on what you were observing at the 14110 Fensbury Drive, it would be fair to say that the highest concentration of Blue Star and what would have been presumptively tested as blood was in the kitchen area. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And then there was then a little bit less, but some in this hallway area, kind of like a little bit in the recliner and a little bit on the couch that we've talked about with several crime scene individuals. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the reality of it is that based on everything that you have done and everything that the crime scene technicians have done, when you walked away on August 27th from the crime scene itself, there is no way to tell where exactly Mr. Deans was killed. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, as it relates to the scene, when you first arrived and someone had obviously already gone inside and had found another individual deceased in the house in 14110, you indicated that you went out to get a search warrant. You were gone for a couple, 3 hours. Was it your understanding that the bedroom door where the body was found had already been breached in some way?
Yes, that was patrol.
And do you know whether or not someone stood, basically outside of that bedroom while you went to get the search warrant, or did they actually stand outside of the house as a whole?
No, they physically stood outside of the house on the front foyer area, outside of the front door.
And
So
was that Rizzo? Does that name sound familiar?
I would have to look through the supplements, but it was a uniformed deputy.
And as you were walking through in the dining room area, in your initial walkthrough, you saw what you and crime scene technician Garman determined to have been a purse or some type of purse-like that you believe belonged to Miriam Deans, based on what you found inside. Is that correct?
Are you talking about in the dining
The
room
red
area?
one? Yes.
Correct, yes.
And you also found a plastic bag,
Yes.
and you also looked there to see what kind of receipt there might be or something. Is that
Correct.
correct? And do you recall whether or not Ms. Dean's keys were actually also in that same general area?
I'd have to look through the photographs to see if they were in there or if they were still in the vehicle or whatever. But I'd have to look through the photographs to remember.
In looking at the inventory and the photographs that you just saw with the vehicle, did you see any keys within the vehicle itself?
Not with the photographs Mr. Terry showed.
And you had already learned from everyone who had already responded earlier that the front door was open
Correct.
to that residence, 14110, when the first neighborhood survey attempt was made, correct?
Correct.
And did you observe whether or not the lights were on in the house?
I remember the lights were on in the kitchen area, and I want to say the dining room where the purse and items were set on the dining room table. I don't recall any other lights being on.
And there obviously has been testimony that in the actual living room that there was a movie that had been paused.
Yes.
And you recall the name of the movie?
Ex Machina?
Do you know anything about that movie at all?
No, never seen it.
And you indicated that you had seen a bag of Cheetos or something of that sort in a chair right there in the living room. Are you talking about a reclining chair or a separate chair?
It was a reclining chair, so it would have been facing the TV, like to the left of a couch that was in front of the kitchen area.
And did you notice that there were other items that were also in that chair, such as perhaps like a throw, could have been a throw comforter or something of that sort? There were other items there, not just a bag of Cheetos.
Right. I think there was a blanket or something to that effect. I'd have to look at the pictures again.
And, excuse me for just one minute. The photograph that you previously discussed with Mr. Terry, I just want to make sure I understood you correctly, and particularly 24D, the photograph of Mr. Deans,
Yes.
and the photographs that are in this frame that have the word laugh,
Yes.
and that is photograph 24E, and then the photograph 24G of the safe, the safes, the sentry safes. All of those were literally found inside of a linen closet, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
The photograph, or at least let me put it this way, when you were doing your walkthrough and then when photographs were going to be taken of the room that you believed to have belonged to Ms. Nachtman based on other things that you saw in there and how it was set up, you found some medication over the counter, and that was Unisom sleep tablets, is that correct?
I believe it was. I don't recall the brand or anything, but you could tell it was an over-the-counter.
And you know they were sleep tablets, whatever their name was?
Again, I'd have to look at photographs to see what it was, if it was allergy meds or something.
All right. You're gonna have to give me a moment to find the exhibit. show you what was introduced already by Mr. Terry, photograph 14N, and just ask you if you could look at that one photograph and tell me if you can see the words Unisom sleep tablets on there.
I see sleep tabs and I see OM, so
Well, we're good on the sleep tablets. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sleep
I appreciate
tablets.
it. Thank you very much. And did you also locate the marriage certificate of Mr. Deans and Mrs. Deans?
yes, I think it was in one of those Century safes where it came from.
Did you do a walk of the outside of the home at 14110 all the way around? Did you walk around the entire house?
It was myself and a couple other detectives from my unit and crime scene. So I remember going through some of the front yard area, a lot of the landscaping beds, and then the side of the house, which would be, it was in a cul-de-sac. So it was kind of like I guess you could say the north side, closest to the crossroad. And then I covered and walked through the back pool area within the screen enclosure, all that area out there.
In doing your walking through all those areas, you did not see anything that you thought was of any evidentiary value. Obviously, I know about Mrs. Dean's out in the driveway next door and all that, but as you walked around, you didn't find anything of evidentiary value. Is that correct?
No, ma'am, not from the perimeter of the home, no.
And when you were walking through the back and through the sides, did you happen to notice the garage door from the side that you could exit from the garage?
Yes.
And at the time, do you know whether the door was open or locked or anything of that sort?
I don't remember, but obviously that'd be something we would check, see if it was secured or not. I do remember seeing a doorway, because I did walk through that area at some point during the course of the couple days I was there. I think there were some trash cans on that side of the house as well, I think.
And did you have occasion to go to the house at 14108 to look outside, from the inside to the outside of their home to see what could be observed?
I believe one of the other detectives did that. I didn't personally go in there and look.
And do you recall that what the lighting was, the natural lighting was on the exteriors of these homes?
It was before 10 p.m., I think after 8:30, so it would have been, that time of year, it would have been dark. I don't remember if they had like exterior lights next to the doors. So I couldn't tell you if it was lit up with any exterior lights or not.
You recall that the crime scene technicians set up their own type of illumination that actually illuminated both 14110 as well as 14108 Finsbury? Do you recall that?
Correct. Yes, that would have been for the processing outside with the female's body.
And is it also accurate that a neighborhood survey was done of the homes around there to talk to different people, as well as to look to see whether or not anyone had any type of security system, exterior security system, that may have captured anything?
Yes, that would have been done by the lead, the assist, and then the other peripheral detectives. So I didn't have any part of the neighborhood survey.
So as you sit here today, to the best of your knowledge, did anyone ever find a recording of any type of movement within that area, let's say from the time period of 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night?
Not that I'm aware of.
And are you aware of whether or not any of the homes on that cul-de-sac area actually had outside recording security systems?
I'm unaware if they did.
Thank you, Judge.
Redirect. No, Judge. May this witness be excused or subject to recall?
He's, he may be excused.
And by the defense, excused or subject to recall?
Judge, I'd like to keep the court verbal subject to recall, if it's okay, and we've got his contact
Okay,
information.
absolutely. All right, thank you. Be
Thank you,
subject to
Judge.
recall, so you're not released at this time. But
Absolutely.
you may step down.
Thank you.
You're not-